On the other hand, if you descend into details, you will find that, for instance, the big surrender on the part of the church. By the way, Bernard, when I say the church, I'm always talking about churchmen. There are two things to be distinguished. The church essentially is the mystical body of Jesus. What is that? The words people toss out, what does it mean? It means this, that there is a body, there is a group of people on earth and in heaven who are in the state of grace. And being in the state of grace, that is the church without spot or wrinkle. That belongs to Jesus completely. There is a body of people in purgatory who are being purged and cleansed by grace. And they also belong to the mystical body. That's the church suffering, the church militant, and the church triumphant. That's the church, essentially. It has a visible organization, an institutional organization called Roman Catholicism, based in Rome, the first bishop of Rome, the Pope, and then consisting of dioceses run by bishops, all of whom are supposed to be subject to the Pope, to obey the Petrine authority of the keys of St. Peter.
And we will be using the term church in line with the institutional church.
That's right. Whenever we speak about the church, we're talking about the institutional organization, not that pure and holy body of people. Nowadays, of course, the numbers who really belong there, that's another question. Nobody can say. But we can go back to that question at another moment in this talk. Now, the church itself, if you examine its progress, say since 1930, you'll find that the seedbed of all the errors that have plagued the church and do plague the church today began then. They began then. Now, the biggest plague, the biggest triumph of Satan is the destruction of the Mass. Because without the Mass, without valid priests saying valid Masses, being ordained validly by validly ordained consecrated bishops, we have no Mass, we have no Blessed Sacrament, the presence of Jesus is wiped out.
Let's go back here now to the reign of Pius XII.
Yes.
He put out an encyclical called Mediator Dei.
1946.
Yes, so this liturgical movement must have been active long before the Novus Ordo Mass was introduced.
In the 1930s, it was. And in that Mediator Dei, as you've known, but let's remind our listeners, he actually says, and there are some people who want to take away the tabernacle from the altar. He listed all the
They want to take away black vestments.
That's right. That's right. They want the place to face the people. But why did he do that? Because in Belgium and France and Germany of the 30s, there was a movement, a liturgical movement, mainly started by Benedictines, but also supported by the Jesuits, which proposed all these things, proposed people masses. And when it came to the Vatican Council itself, as you know, the last vote in the Council in 1965 concerned the Mass. And the bishops were absolutely categorical. They said, do not wipe out the Latin, keep the Latin Mass, but translate the popular part, meaning the Credo, the Gloria, the prayer before Mass, the Intuibo Mass, prayers as we call them, and the communion prayers at the end. Put those in the popular language. But the canon stands. This was the Council. And I remember that a bishop who had visited Paul VI just after the end of the Council in December 1965 came in to me here in New York and said, you know, Malachi, the most extraordinary thing happened to me. I was speaking with the Pope, His Holiness, 2 days ago. And I congratulated him on the vote in the Council. And he said, don't speak to me about the vote. Don't congratulate me. There are already 18 new canons in vogue in France. They've gone haywire. They've already translated into vernacular. And the thing is not valid anymore. And I had no control over it. So what happened? Well, there was a character called Bugnini, Annibale Bugnini, who was a Freemason, member of the Lodge, who set as his goal to create a new ceremony in the Catholic Church. He has this in his articles published in the Italian Revista, which could be accepted by anybody, Catholic or non-Catholic or non-Christian.
So it's an ecumenical religion, and because Bugnini was a Freemason, one wonders if he was doing this in the long run to lead towards the creation of a one-world religion.
Of course he was. Of course he was. The difficulty is that he wasn't alone. He had powerful friends. And by the way, just as a footnote, you know that the official canon of the Mass now, the new Mass, the Novus Ordo, was composed by 6 Protestant clergymen and 2 Catholic clergymen. I mean, how bastardized can you become? No matter how pious and good these men were, they're not Catholics. They didn't know the Catholic tradition. But anyway, let's go on. What we have to acknowledge too is that there was a very carefully laid out integrated plan to make sure that no statement of the Vatican Council, if possible, couldn't be ambivalent. And I remember Cardinal Bea coming to see me once in my room in Rome, and this was 1962, sweating. And the council had just begun. It was November 1962. And I asked him why he was disturbed. He said, because I've just heard an awful remark by Hans Küng. He was talking to, and he named an American theologian, who is now a bishop, who shall remain unnamed. And he said, Küng, in answer to a question by this man, I didn't hear the question, said, oh, no. This time we're not going to leave. We're not going to have another Reformation. We're staying inside this time. Which gives an eye-opener on what the plan was. And the plan was simply to make sure that the traditional Romanist Catholic traits of the Church would be wiped out. The result is that if you examine all the documents of the Vatican Council, there are 15 main ones, you'll find that except for something like the Mass, what it says about the Mass, the old Mass, the Roman Mass, as I always call it. I refuse the name Tridentine even, because Trent did not invent this Mass. It was the old Roman Mass celebrated by Pope Damasus in the 5th century. The idea was to make sure that no statement of the Council would stand, that could not be interpreted ambivalently. For instance, nuns must modernize their dress. It's quite clear from the discussions in the council at that time, they meant, well, get rid of things which are really a hindrance, say, in a subway, or a hindrance simply are out of place. They certainly didn't mean nuns to walk around with pearl necklaces and lipstick and powder and hot pants and hot dresses, and to sit in cocktails in large hotels having their annual conventions. They meant nuns to have a garb, a religious garb, a sign of their devotion to the spouse they had married by their vows.
What seems to have happened is a complete revolution, because for a nun to go from heavily garbed into lipstick and watching television and miniskirts, it's a total turnaround.
It was destruction. It was destruction. Not only that, but there were a whole, as you know, in California, there was a whole set of schools that simply, all the nuns simply left the order, left the church. But that was carefully done in the Vatican Council. Everything was left ambivalently. And the main thing that was left ambivalent was religious liberty and the idea of communism. As you know, 500 fathers asked Paul VI to allow them to condemn communism. They were forbidden. That was one of the agreements that John III made with Nikita Khrushchev. That was one of the things that haunts us today. Let's talk